The secret of using language to avoid suffering, according to the Buddha. Right speech. Consider how many times you have thought to yourself, if only I hadn't said those words. Or judging by their expression, I know my words hurt them. Careless words, excessive remarks, and tactless comments bring us a great deal of suffering. When we lie, we get caught. Gossiping about friends causes trouble for them. Speaking without thinking offends customers or friends. Engaging in idle chatter wastes time and accomplishes nothing. The bad habits in speech are not new issues. The Buddha regarded the practice of right speech as so vital to the development of personal character and spiritual growth that he made it a distinct part of the Noble Eightfold Path, the path leading to happiness. The Buddha taught that right speech has 4 characteristics. It is truthful, it inspires and uplifts, it is not harsh or bitter, but brings joy. It is gentle and not rude or rough, and it is humble and not useless or meaningless. The Buddha taught that a person who often speaks gentle and kind words will quickly gain trust and respect. Such a person will enjoy a state of calm and serenity and will be able to communicate with others in a friendly manner. For instance, have you noticed that people often speak to you in the same manner they hear you speak? If we frequently exaggerate or lie, others find it easy to lie back to us. If we have a habit of speaking sarcastically, others feel comfortable being blunt with us. Conversely, if we consistently speak the truth, our words are trusted more. If we are discreet, others find it hard to gossip about us. If our words are always kind and gentle, people feel embarrassed to use foul or harsh language in our presence. Clearly, our speech creates an environment that can either nurture happiness or destroy it. We know this because our personal experience shows that how we act or think is heavily influenced by the words spoken around us. One of the first nuns in the Buddhist community expressed this observation through poetry. If one befriends virtuous companions, even a fool becomes wise. If we want to become wise, we must not only seek virtuous friends, but also be virtuous friends to others. Achieving this requires mindful effort in practicing right speech. A Buddhist folktale illustrates how powerfully our words can influence our actions. A monk in the Buddha's Sangha had the habit of attending lavish meals with a group led by the immoral monk, Devadatta. Tempted by the delicious food these people offered, the monk often spent a lot of time socializing with this unwholesome group. The Buddha reprimanded the monk for choosing such friends and warned him of the consequences of his actions. To persuade the monk to change his attitude, the Buddha told him a story about an event from a past life in which the monk had been led astray by the harsh, unwholesome words of those around him. The Buddha said that in a past life, the monk was a large elephant under the care of a king. This elephant was known for its graceful and gentle demeanor. Then, a group of thieves began gathering near the elephant's stall each night to discuss their dark schemes. They spoke harshly to each other, encouraging one another to commit murder and other cruel deeds. The elephant began to believe that these harsh words were meant to teach it to act in a similar manner. As a result, the previously gentle elephant became fierce, attacking anyone who approached it. The king, who owned the elephant, sent a minister, who was the future Buddha, to investigate what had caused the gentle elephant to turn vicious. The minister heard the thieves' cruel words and realized how they had influenced the elephant. He advised the king to send wise and learned sages, known for their gentle speech, to speak near the elephant's stall each night. The kind and pleasant words soon influenced the elephant, returning it to its gentle nature, and it never became vicious again. Right speech can improve our lives in many ways. If only we never had to regret anything we said, we would be relieved of many burdens. Let's delve deeper into the 4 characteristics of right speech and examine how they can help us on the path to happiness. Speaking the truth. The first characteristic of right speech is always speaking the truth. The Buddha taught us never to lie, whether for personal gain, for the benefit of others, or for any other advantage. The Buddha summarized the guidelines for speaking the truth as follows. When someone is asked to testify, friend, please tell what you know. If you know, say I know. If you do not know, say, I do not know. If you did not see, say, I did not see. If you saw, say, I saw. Do not intentionally speak falsehood for the sake of your own benefit or someone else's, or for some trifling worldly gain. There are also times when we are asked a question where silence may imply a certain answer. If our silence will reflect a falsehood, we must speak up. For example, if a police officer investigating a crime scene asks the crowd if anyone saw anything, and everyone remains silent, the officer will conclude that no one witnessed the event. If someone in the crowd did see what happened but chose to remain silent, they are lying by omission. They might feel they have valid reasons for not speaking, such as fear of retaliation, but their silence is still a lie. We can also lie through body language. Sometimes a shrug or a frown can be misunderstood as "I don't know," but if you do know, then that shrug is deceitful. However, there are instances when the truth should be kept confidential, because revealing it might harm others. In such cases, we must wait for the right time to speak the appropriate words to the appropriate person. The Buddha himself often remained silent when his answer might harm someone. Once, someone asked the Buddha if there was life after death. The Buddha simply sat in silence until the person gave up and left. Later, Ananda, his attendant, asked why the Buddha did not answer. The Buddha explained that any answer would have caused the person to suffer. If he had answered that there was life after death, the person would have concluded that there was an eternal self, which is a false belief that leads to suffering. But if he had answered that there was no life after death, the person would have misunderstood and thought, "Then I will not be reborn again," and would have suffered greatly. To avoid causing suffering, the Buddha chose to remain silent. The Buddha set guidelines to determine whether to speak or remain silent. If he knew something to be untrue, false, or unhelpful, he would not speak it. Such words the Buddha does not say. If he knew something to be true, factual, and beneficial, then the Buddha knows the time to use words. If his words were true, factual, beneficial, and timely, the Buddha would speak them regardless of whether they would be opposed or disagreed with by others, or accepted and agreed upon by others. With deep compassion and complete attention to the welfare of others, the Buddha never spoke just to please others. We can learn much from his virtue. When I am about to say something that does not align with the Buddha's guidelines, I remind myself that if I speak, I gain nothing, and no one gains or loses anything by my silence. For example, during a conversation with friends, one person is leading the discussion. I have something to say and feel impatient to wait. But I reflect on what I want to say and know that it is true according to past events, true to the current data, and it will benefit the listeners. However, if I speak immediately, I will offend the person speaking. This is not the right time, so I remind myself that I gain nothing by speaking out of turn, and no one gains or loses anything by my silence. I can say what needs to be said at another time. Words are not weapons. The second characteristic of right speech is to avoid malicious speech, wrong speech. As a common saying goes, the tongue is a boneless weapon trapped between two jaws. When we speak venomously, the tongue unleashes swords and daggers. Such words can cause someone to lose their honor and reputation. Even if what we say about someone is true, if our intention is to harm that person, it is malicious. The Buddha defined wrong speech as words that sever friendships between people. Here is an example. Suppose on a trip, I meet an acquaintance of my friend who lives far away. I recall that a few months ago, my friend told me an unflattering story about this person. I may not remember the story entirely, so I add a bit when retelling it. I make it seem as though I am doing a favor by informing the person that my friend spoke behind their back. The listener reacts angrily. When I return, I repeat the listener's words to my friend, adding a bit more to make the story more compelling. Since my actions cause a disagreement and the breakdown of a friendship, such words are wrong speech. Sometimes we disguise malicious speech as concern about someone else's actions. Or we reveal a secret that someone has trusted us with, believing we are doing it for their benefit. For example, telling a woman that her husband is unfaithful because you don't want her to be the last to know can cause more suffering for everyone involved. When you are about to speak in such a way, ask yourself what your purpose is. If it is to appear superior to others, to gain someone's gratitude, then your words are to satisfy your ego and are more malicious than ethical. Public speech can also be malicious. Tabloid newspapers, Online radio shows, chat rooms on the internet, and even some reputable media outlets seem to make a living using words as weapons. For example, sensational news about recent events is aimed at increasing readership and advertising revenue. Malicious words bring someone down to elevate someone else. They make the speaker appear bold, smart, or daring, regardless of others' rights. Not all malicious speech is crude. Sometimes people use seemingly gentle, sweet words with malicious intent. Such disguised verbal daggers are more dangerous than outright harsh words because they easily penetrate the listener's mind. In modern language, we call this backhanded compliments. For example, when we say to someone, "You are so wise to renovate your old house instead of moving to a more upscale neighborhood," or "Your gray hair looks great. The mature look really suits your profession." Right speech not only means being mindful of the words and tone, but also requires that our speech reflects compassion and concern for others, and that it supports, heals, rather than wounds and destroys. Kind words. The third type of wrong speech is harsh or coarse language. Insulting words, venomous speech, sarcastic remarks, arrogant criticism, or severe cursing are all examples of harsh language. Speech is a powerful tool that can be used for good or ill. The Buddha compared speech to a hammer. Everyone is born with a hammer in their mouth. The fool uses harsh words and hurts himself and others with that hammer. We might think of a hammer as a tool for chopping firewood. But in the Buddha's time, a hammer was a sharp and dangerous tool. It was used to split long logs, carve and chisel wood very precisely. It could fell tall trees and was a dangerous weapon, a formidable means that could maim or kill. A modern-day equivalent might be a computer. Computers can be used for many beneficial purposes, communicating across continents, creating music, or launching rockets to Mars. But they can also be used for destructive purposes. People use computers to launch missiles and control other weapons in warfare. Just as we must choose how to use a hammer or a computer, we must also choose how to use our words. Do we use words to encourage, comfort, and uplift others? Or do we use words to bring them down and hurt ourselves in the process? Sarcasm, malicious gossip, lies, or crude, thoughtless jokes not only offend others, but also make us look foolish, unable to use the hammer in our mouths without causing self-inflicted wounds. We are also foolish if we think that harsh, coarse language can accomplish anything positive. While we may feel satisfaction in putting someone down, teaching them a lesson, it is not a noble victory. As the Buddha taught, the fool thinks he has won with harsh, coarse words. But knowing how to restrain oneself, that alone is a true victory. Using harsh, offensive language to silence someone is easy. A wise opponent often withdraws from such an encounter and responds with cold silence. We might pat ourselves on the back and think, "I really showed him. He shut up when I spoke." But that outward victory is shallow. Our opponent might swear never to interact with us again, or secretly vow to take revenge someday. The ill will and suffering we cause others will rebound on us when we least expect it. It is not hard to find other examples of the negative effects of harsh words. Suppose you have a technically brilliant colleague, but his communication is problematic. He creates friction with colleagues through rude, coarse, arrogant, venomous, and derogatory remarks. As a result, even though his work is excellent, no one can stand him, and he has no path to advancement. A sadder example is the negative impact of harsh, coarse words on children. We've all heard parents say to their children, "You're such a disgrace, you can't do anything right, or you'll never amount to anything." Many of us may recall hearing similar words as children. Verbal abuse can leave scars on a child's soul that never heal. Of course, sometimes parents need to use firm words to keep their children safe, like warning them not to play with matches or run into the street. But firm words motivated by love and concern are different from those meant to humiliate or threaten. Even animals are affected by harsh words. My nephew had an Alaskan dog named Taurus. Taurus was very curious about animals he saw on TV and even tried to bite them. Being large, Taurus would often block the view of people sitting behind him when he became engrossed in what he saw on the screen. One day, someone shouted at Taurus to move aside in a very irritated, stern tone. Taurus reacted by going down to the basement and staying there for a week, refusing to come out even to eat. Occasionally, he would come out to take care of business, but then immediately return. Finally, the family had to coax him with gentle, sweet words before Taurus would come back upstairs. The gentle words of my nephew's family help restore the dog's friendliness. Kind words, as the Buddha taught, are always appropriate and welcomed. Speak kind words, words that are gladly welcomed, words that bear goodwill and are free from malice. Speak always with kindness to others. Saying to someone, "I really appreciate what you did. You handled that situation beautifully," or "It's great to see you," warms both the speaker and the listener. Gentle words are like honey on the lips. Expressing admiration or gratitude makes everyone happier. These words help us create and maintain friendships because everyone wants to be around someone whose gentle, kind words make them feel relaxed and comfortable. Gentle, kind words help children grow up with a sense of self-worth. Such words also help us learn and appreciate the Buddha's teachings. If we speak kind and wise words, the happiness we can spread to those around us becomes limitless. But be careful. Kind and gentle words must be sincere and come from a noble purpose. Speaking sweetly while thinking or doing the opposite is deceitful and not virtuous. We all know of religious leaders who use sweet words to spread fear or solicit donations for their organizations. I remember a Sri Lankan man who went around the country campaigning against the evils of alcohol. Thanks to his eloquence, he became famous, powerful, and widely known, attracting many followers. He led a campaign to close bars, eliminate liquor stores, and ban alcohol sales. One hot summer day, while he was delivering a passionate speech, he hastily took off his vest. A small bottle of liquor fell out of his pocket and hit the stage floor. That incident ended his campaign against alcohol and his political career. Although what he said about the dangers of alcohol was true, once people saw his deceit, they no longer wanted to listen to him. Avoiding idle chatter. The fourth type of wrong speech is idle chatter, which the Buddha referred to as frivolous or senseless talk. Gossip is a form of wrong speech, regardless of whether what we say about someone is true or not. After all, if 3 people tell a story to a 4th person, each version of the story will differ. Human nature tends to believe whatever we hear first, even though it may only reflect one person's perspective. These accounts might be based on truth, but gossip often becomes exaggerated and embellished. Gossip often leads to arguments and misunderstandings. It can destroy relationships. In severe cases, it can result in lawsuits for defamation or loss of reputation. In the Buddha's time, such actions could even topple an entire federation. The Lichavi people were an independent, proud tribe and one of the most powerful and significant members of a strong federation of 8 tribes. Their capital was the federation's capital. King Ajatasattu, an ambitious monarch and supporter of the heretical teacher Devadatta, planned to invade and conquer the Lichavi people. However, the king also sought the Buddha's advice about this invasion plan. The Buddha noted that the Lichavi people lived harmoniously and advised the king, "You cannot invade and conquer them as long as they remain united and harmonious." The king postponed his invasion and pondered the Buddha's words. Later, King Ajatasattu devised a simple but malicious plan. He instructed his prime minister to whisper something in the ear of a Lichavi man. The minister went to a Lichavi man and whispered a meaningless, trivial statement, "There is rice in the fields." Everyone knew rice could be found in the fields. But seeing the two whisper, another Lichavi man began to speculate about what the prime minister of King Ajatasattu had said to his friend. So he asked, and the first man repeated the statement about rice in the fields. Hearing this, the second Lichavi thought, "He is hiding the truth. He doesn't trust me. He made up this foolish statement about rice fields to deceive me." Filled with suspicion, this man went to tell another Lichavi about the whispering with the prime minister of King Ajatasattu. That person told yet another, and so on, until everyone believed the first man was a spy, and a secret society had been secretly formed within their community. Thus, peace was shattered. The Lichavis accused each other, leading to arguments and a war among the leading families of the Federation. Seeing his enemies divided, King Ajatasattu invaded Lichavi people and easily won the battle. After that, the king continued to conquer the remaining tribes. I do not need to hear such stories to understand how dangerous gossip can be. I have experienced it myself. It seems that whenever someone tries to do something good for society, someone else feels compelled to oppose that effort. They may feel insecure or jealous of another's success. Gossip is their weapon. They do not need to present evidence. They simply whisper harmful things and rely on others' not willingness to participate in idle talk to accomplish their harmful deeds. When we first tried to raise funds to build the meditation center, someone spread rumors about the Bhavana Society. They said I was exploiting donors and planned to use the funds we had raised to start a shady business. Anonymous letters were sent to key people, urging them not to donate. These rumors were fabricated with ill intent, but they were spread by people who did not know the truth. The Buddhist community where I lived, initially very enthusiastic, became shaken and divided. Fortunately, those opposing the Bhavana Society's construction could not find any actual evidence to exaggerate. Otherwise, they might have completely undermined our efforts. As long as people are willing to believe what others say and mindlessly repeat it, rumors will continue to spread. On one occasion, an American member of the Bhavana Society's board of directors went to Sri Lanka. There, he joined a group of meditators from various countries discussing meditation centers around the world. Someone mentioned the Bhavana Society, and a woman declared, "Oh, that's the center where they have tea parties every evening." When our board member objected, she insisted she was telling the truth. Finally, our board member said, "I have known Bhante Gunaratana since 1971 and have been involved with the Bhavana Society since its inception. I am sure there are no tea parties there." If no one knowledgeable had been present, no one could have refuted her claim. Others might have added more false and harmful details. This is how rumors are created and can harm individuals and organizations. If we hear someone spreading rumors or harmful information, we have two choices: either end the conversation or disagree with the falsehood, as our board member did. But there is a deeper, more profound aspect to the Buddha's advice to refrain from gossip. Many of us spend a lot of time talking about the meals we ate days or months ago, or recalling details from a frivolous movie or TV show we watched. We waste time telling jokes and idle stories. These conversations do not contribute to our intellectual growth. Considering how short life is and how it can be taken away by accidents or illnesses, do we really want to waste precious time on idle chatter? It's also true that some seemingly trivial or frivolous conversations can have an important purpose. Sometimes we need to use light, meaningless talk to comfort someone or connect with our children. Any mindful speech stemming from love and compassion is an acceptable part of right speech. The way to judge is to pause and ask ourselves before speaking, is what I'm about to say true? Is it kind? Is it helpful? Does it harm anyone? Is this the right time to say it? Right mindfulness in right speech. Right speech is not something you can practice on the meditation cushion. It happens during conversations, not in silence. However, while sitting in meditation, we can reflect on our speaking habits and strive to transform unwholesome mental states into wholesome ones, stemming from equanimity, loving kindness, and compassion. We can analyze our past actions and ask ourselves, were the things I said yesterday true? Did I use kind, gentle, truthful, and meaningful words? If we find that we were wrong in any aspect, we must resolve to perfect our mindfulness of right speech. The best approach is to think before speaking. People often say, hold your tongue, but it's more accurate to hold your mind. The tongue cannot act on its own. The mind directs it. Before speaking, observe your mind to see if the motivation is wholesome. You will regret any words spoken from greed, hatred, or delusion. Additionally, one must firmly resolve not to say anything that could harm others. This resolution will ensure careful thinking before speaking. When speaking mindfully, we will naturally speak truthfully, gently, and pleasantly. Mindfulness helps us refrain from using words like weapons that can deeply hurt others. If the intention to speak harshly arises, immediately use mindfulness and right effort to prevent those thoughts from continuing. The resolution not to harm others with our speech becomes especially important when speaking to someone we dislike or when debating topics we strongly support. Be cautious. Only use kind, carefully chosen words. In such situations, gentle and calm words help maintain harmony and keep the discussion productive and friendly for everyone. If someone approaches you angrily, complaining or speaking ill of one of your friends, for example, and you feel irritated, it's best to say nothing. Remind yourself silently, I must not react. I should not lose my mindfulness as they have. Arguing is pointless. I resolve to only engage in beneficial conversations. The other person will likely respond to your silence by stopping their upsetting talk. You can then guide the conversation to a more positive topic. As Buddhists, the moment we realize a conversation is going nowhere, we have a responsibility to steer it in a better direction. It's easy to get carried away in emotional arguments, leading to shouting. Such conflicts cause suffering for everyone involved. With mindful awareness, recall how painful it is to lose control. Remember that it may take hours or days to calm down enough to speak to the other person again. Many good feelings can be lost, sometimes permanently. However, despite our best efforts, we may still get angry. If the other person continues to provoke you, attacking you with harsh words, you might lose control. It's easy to get angry then. When you notice your irritation growing, say wait to the other person, hoping to gain a moment to calm yourself. But if they reply, no, you wait, and continue their attack, what should you do? In such situations, when the conversation has spiraled out of control, our duty is to quickly bring back mindfulness and use right effort to subdue our anger. Even if the anger causes your heart to race, your body to sweat, and your hands to shake, mindfulness of your vow to avoid harsh speech can help you control yourself. Just don't let the anger make you speak. Focus on your breath to re-establish mindfulness until your anger subsides. Self-restraint gives both you and the other person an opportunity to open up kindly. When your heart has calmed down, you can see the other person more clearly and understand why you are both upset. At that moment, you will also realize how uncomfortable anger makes you feel. When your care and respect for the other person increase, you can decide to use that moment to start a new relationship based on mutual respect and affection, strengthening the friendship between you. This is what we should always aim to achieve. When you realize that you have trained your mind and controlled your speech to turn a situation into a more harmonious one, be happy about it. Tell yourself, this is what I want. I always want to act in ways that bring about good things. Keep these thoughts in mind. I will share a story where I had to use mindfulness to practice right speech. Perhaps my experience will help you understand how to apply mindful awareness to situations in your life, at work, at home, and in personal relationships. Many years ago, when I was managing a temple, some people called for a meeting of the temple's benefactors. They opposed some projects I had initiated and wanted to express their anger through this forum. Some of these individuals reacted very strongly to the issues being discussed. They were born into Buddhist families but had no interest in meditation. In fact, they viewed meditation as madness. Therefore, they couldn't understand my work. I knew that I would be the target at this meeting, but what happened was worse than anyone could imagine. About 40 people attended the meeting, including many of my relatives, friends, and other Buddhists who came to show their support for my efforts. Before the meeting officially began, even before any introductions, a rude man stood up and started speaking. This man was uneducated, unskilled, and had a tendency to use coarse language. He didn't say much about the temple issues being discussed, but spoke a lot about me personally. Using disrespectful and uncivil language, he accused me of doing nothing for the temple for years, of causing people to stop supporting the temple, and so on. He attacked me with offensive and unacceptable words for 20 minutes. During this shocking verbal assault, I had to struggle with myself. I had to reason with myself to prevent anger from arising. I could see that this man was in a state of mental distress, and I reminded myself, I know this man is kind-hearted. We have had good relations in the past. He must have been poisoned by those who oppose me to speak like this. I also reflected that I had many opportunities to develop spiritually and culturally that he lacked. I remembered that he only had an elementary education, very few skills, and little interest in spiritual practice. By doing so, I tried to extend compassion towards him and was grateful that my practice made it difficult for me to speak or act as he did. I also reflected on the content of the situation. I thought that if I spoke against him, my supporters would rise to defend me, and the meeting might turn into a brawl. I saw many people rolling their eyes, glaring at him, and fidgeting in their seats. I felt their pain, especially my relatives. I was the elder in the family, the brother, uncle, and great-uncle, and I was known as a kind monk. Naturally, my family felt compassion and the need to protect me. I knew that if I showed hurt or anger at his words, my relatives would feel anger and other unwholesome states. They might even attack this man. So I reminded myself, now I must practice mindfulness, patience, and understanding to bring peace to this meeting. I established mindfulness by focusing on my breath. When faced with such confrontations, it is crucial to pause and take deep breaths before reacting, perhaps 2 minutes of deep breathing or 30 breaths in and 30 out. This pause gives us time to calm down and purify the mind so we can speak gently instead of harshly. Finally, the man seemed to have vented his emotions and stopped speaking. Everyone was tense. All eyes were on me. In a gentle voice, I said, "This man has been my friend. He has always supported the temple and has done many good and beneficial deeds. He also knows what I have done for the temple over the years. However, today he seems disappointed, angry, and perhaps not feeling calm. Therefore, I feel it is necessary to offer a blessing for him and for everyone." I asked everyone to join hands in prayer to show respect to the Buddha by saying 3 times, "We pay homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Fully Enlightened One." This is how we usually begin solemn ceremonies. From that moment, due to the power of tradition, no one could argue or express any opposing views anymore, as they didn't want to appear disrespectful to the Buddha. Then, I led the group in taking the 5 precepts to uplift their spirits and ensure that everyone remembered the Buddha's teachings on non-harming and truthfulness. Finally, I recited a long blessing chant, and when it ended, I said, "Now you can go home. The meeting is over." And that was the end of the story. Many years later, that man still kept a cool attitude towards me, but later I had the opportunity to help him through difficult times in his life. Since then, he has remained friendly to me and always expressed gratitude and respect. Mindfulness was the key to dealing smoothly with that difficult situation. You can use this method too. Sometimes I hear people justify their actions by saying that things happened so quickly that even with mindfulness, they couldn't control their actions or words. Saying even with mindfulness, they acted that way is incorrect. Perhaps their mindfulness was too weak or overpowered by greed, hatred, or delusion. Because by definition, mindfulness helps us control what we think, how we act, and what we say. You cannot insult someone mindfully, abuse alcohol mindfully, or commit sexual misconduct mindfully. If you are truly mindful, you cannot do such things. Because our ingrained habits are so strong, whenever we open our mouths, words seem to flow out. You may not realize how much energy we expend when we speak. With mindfulness, we can stop this energy loss and conserve it. We can use this conserved energy to gain insight into the nature of our habits. Using this energy as fuel, we can reflect on ourselves during meditation, review our actions, and strive to train our minds further. However, when we let this pent-up energy out without mindfulness, it often explodes like a cork from a bottle. I often see this at the end of meditation retreats. Just moments before, everyone was completely silent, sitting still or moving gently and slowly. Then, the moment the vow of silence ends, there's an explosion of talking. Conversations and dialogues continue for hours or more, until all the accumulated energy is spent. The longer the retreat, the noisier people become, unless they make an effort to maintain mindfulness in their speech. The only remedy for wrong speech is a strong dose of mindfulness, not just during retreats or when you are in challenging situations, but throughout your life. Mindfulness of right speech will bring you happiness. I guarantee it. Summary of right speech. Here are the summarized guidelines to prevent suffering through the practice of right speech. Right speech means not lying, not using harsh, rough, or frivolous language. Lying by remaining silent is still lying. Malicious speech is the type of language that destroys friendships or damages someone's reputation. Verbal attacks, sarcasm, vulgarity, deceit, and excessive criticism all fall under the category of harsh, rough speech. Harsh, rough speech harms others and lowers the dignity of the speaker. Gossip and frivolous talk often lead to arguments, misunderstandings, waste of time, and mental agitation. All speech that does not stem from equanimity, love, and compassion is harmful. One way to determine if you are using right speech is to pause and ask yourself before speaking, is this true? Is it kind? Is it beneficial? Will it harm anyone? Is this the right time to say it? Use mindfulness to strengthen the resolve not to speak harmfully, and to speak only gentle, well-chosen words that can bring harmony to everyone in any difficult situation. Why was the Shakya clan destroyed? Even the Buddha could not save them. One circumstances, once, while the Buddha was residing in the deer park in Benares, he had only recently attained enlightenment. At that time, King Pasenadi had just ascended the throne. King Pasenadi thought, now that I have ascended the throne, I should marry a daughter of the Shakya clan. If they agree, it will please me greatly. If not, I will use force. The king then instructed an official to go to the city of Kapilavastu to arrange the marriage with a daughter of the Shakya clan. The official arrived in Kapilavastu and conveyed the king's message to the Shakyas. King Pasenadi sends his regards and wishes to marry a daughter from the Shakya clan. If you agree, it will be a great honor. If not, the king will be forced to use pressure. Hearing this, the Shakyas became very angry and discussed among themselves. We are a noble lineage. Why should we marry into a lower family? Some agreed to the marriage, while others disagreed. Among them, a man named Mahanama said, do not be upset. King Pasenadi is ruthless. If we do not agree, he will attack our land. Let me handle this. In Mahanama's household, there was a servant woman who had given birth to a beautiful and virtuous daughter. Mahanama dressed the girl in fine clothes and brought her to King Pasenadi, saying, this is my daughter, she can marry you. King Pasenadi, delighted with the girl's beauty, made her his chief consort. Not long after, she became pregnant and gave birth to a remarkably beautiful son. When it came time to name the child, the king invited an astrologer. The astrologer said, when you sought a bride from the Shakya clan, some agreed and some disagreed, causing a rift. Hence the child should be named Vijudaba, meaning lava. King Pasenadi loved Prince Vijudaba deeply. When the prince turned 8, the king said, you are now old enough. You should go to Kapilavastu to learn archery. The king provided the prince with attendants and sent him on an elephant to his maternal grandfather Mahanamam of the Shakya clan, saying, your father has sent you here to learn archery. Please teach him. Mahanama said, to learn archery, you must train diligently. Mahanam gathered many young boys to practice archery with Vijudaba. The Shakya clan had recently built a grand hall, resembling a celestial palace, to be offered to the Buddha and his disciples. Vijudaba and the other boys entered the hall and climbed onto the lion throne. Seeing this, the Shakyas were outraged. They pulled him down, dragged him out, and scolded him, saying, this is a slave's child. No one dares to enter here, yet this slave's child dares to sit on the lion throne. Someone pushed Vijudaba, causing him to fall. Vijudaba stood up, feeling deeply humiliated. He saw his playmate Hidudaba, the servant's son, nearby and whispered, the Shakyas have humiliated me like this. If I become king one day, remind me of this incident. Commentary. Humans often have a tendency to become angry when things do not go their way, leading to harsh words that cause mental pain and suffering for the listener. Pushing Vijudaba to the ground was merely an additional act, akin to adding fuel to the fire, making it blaze even more intensely. However, it was the humiliating words that were the most damaging and malicious. If handled wisely in such a situation, a gentle request would have sufficed to make the children listen. If they did not comply, they could have been removed from the lion throne gently. Then, the children should have been asked to play outside, the door should have been closed, or someone should have been stationed to ensure they did not come back in and cause trouble. Absolutely, no child should have been humiliated in any form, especially not with actions such as pulling, pushing, or hitting. If the situation had been handled in this manner, there would have been no repercussions. However, due to karmic consequences, the Shakyas spoke and acted in such a way, creating a reason for Vijudaba's actions later on. Let us continue to follow the story below. Two ancient grudges. From that moment on, Hyuko never forgot to remind the prince. When King Pasenadi passed away, Vijudaba ascended the throne, and Hyuko reminded him, Your Majesty, remember how the Shakyas humiliated you. At this, Vijudaba's anger flared. He convened his ministers and asked, "Who rules the people now?" The ministers replied, "Today, your majesty is the sovereign." King Vidudaba commanded, "Then prepare the army and chariots. I intend to conquer the Shakya clan." Once the military preparations were complete, King Vidudaba led a powerful army toward Kapilavastu. At that time, some monks heard the news and informed the Buddha. Hearing this, the Buddha went to sit in meditation under a tree along the path Vidudaba would take. When Vidudaba approached, he saw the Buddha, dismounted from his chariot, walked to the Buddha, bowed, and asked, "Why do you sit under a barren tree when there are lush trees nearby?" The Buddha replied, "The shade of one's kin is far superior." Vidudaba reflected, "Today the Blessed One is here for his kin. I should return and not attack Kapilavastu." With this thought, the king ordered the retreat of his troops, bowed to the Buddha, and returned home. After some time, Huko reminded the king again, "Your Majesty, remember how the Shakyas humiliated you." Once more, Vidudaba's anger was kindled. He ordered the army to march on Kapilavastu for the second time. Again, monks reported this to the Buddha, who went to sit under the same tree. When Vidudaba saw the Buddha, he approached and bowed as before. The Buddha reiterated, "The shade of one's kin is far superior," and recited a verse. "The shade of one's kin, from the Shakyas came the Buddha. They are all my branches and leaves. Thus, I sit under this tree." Vidudaba thought, "The Blessed One comes from the Shakya clan. I should not attack and return home," and ordered his troops to retreat once again. After some time, Huko reminded the king of the past humiliation once more. This time, Vidudaba summoned his army, consisting of elephants, horses, chariots, and infantry, and advanced toward Kapilavastu. Upon hearing this, the venerable Mahamoggallana approached the Buddha, bowed, and said, "Today, Vidudaba has mobilized a formidable army. However, I can prevent him from harming Kapilavastu by transporting the entire city to another world." The Buddha asked, "Can you transfer their past karma to another world?" After contemplating for a moment, Mahamoggallana replied, "I cannot transfer their past karma, but I can lift the entire city into the sky." The Buddha said, "Go back to your seat. Can you lift their past karma into the sky?" After a few moments of reflection, Mahamoggallana responded, "Indeed, I cannot. But may I create a large iron cage to protect the people of Kapilavastu?" The Buddha replied, "Mahamoggallana, can you cage their past karma?" After contemplating again, Mahamoggallana acknowledged, "Indeed, I cannot, Blessed One." The Buddha said, "Go back to your seat. Their past karma has ripened, and they must face its consequences." Then the Buddha recited a verse, "To make the sky the ground or turn the ground to sky, the bonds of past karma cannot be undone." Reflection: King Vidudaba had a loyal minister who continuously reminded him of the old humiliation, leading him to march his troops twice only to retreat after encountering the Buddha. Due to his respect for his father, King Pasenadi, who was a devout Buddhist, Vidudaba felt obliged to honor the Buddha and withdraw his forces. An important point to note is that King Pasenadi was a devout Buddhist, yet he had a son who knew nothing about Buddhism. This ignorance allowed personal grudges to drive Vidudaba's actions, leading him to seek revenge and thus create evil karma. When King Vidudaba advanced for the third time, the venerable Mahamoggallana suggested using his supernatural powers to transport the Shakya clan to another world, hide them in the sky, or create a large iron cage to protect Kapilavastu and its inhabitants. However, the Buddha rejected all these suggestions because supernatural powers cannot counteract the karmic results of past actions. The Buddha asked the venerable, "Can you use an iron cage to cover up past karma?" What is past karma? It refers to the fully ripened karma created in the past, which must now be faced. Just as planting a tree eventually leads to it bearing fruit, and when the fruit ripens, it must fall naturally. Similarly, creating bad karma leads to inevitable consequences. We follow the next section of the story. 3. War. At that time, the Shakya people heard that King Vidudaba was leading an army to attack them, so they mobilized and gathered their 4 divisions of troops within a yojana, approximately 10 miles or 15 to 20 kilometers, to confront the enemy. When they saw the enemy approaching, they fired arrows at King Vidudaba's forces, but they only aimed at hats and hair, avoiding the heads, or at armor without injuring the bodies. They also aimed at bows to break them without harming the people, or at chariots and flags without taking lives. King Vijayadabha, seeing this, became frightened and said to his ministers, "We must kill them all before we can return to Shravasti." Then the Brahmin Huko advised the king, "Do not be afraid, great king." Why? Because the Shakya people all observe the precepts of the Buddha. They do not even wish to harm insects, let alone people. You need not fear. Let us advance, and we shall surely defeat them. Encouraged by this, King Vijayadabha confidently advanced, forcing the Shakya people to retreat into their city. Once outside the city walls, King Vijayadabha's soldiers called out, "Open the city gates, or we will kill everyone inside." At that time, within the city of Kapilavastu, there was a young man named Shama, about 15 or 16 years old. Seeing the two sides fighting, he donned armor, grabbed a stick, and single-handedly charged out of the city to fight King Vijayadabha's soldiers. Being strong and skilled in martial arts, he killed many of Vijayadabha's soldiers, causing their infantry to scatter in disarray. Seeing this, Vijayadabha himself fled and hid in a pit, asking his ministers, "He looks like a mere boy, yet wherever he goes our troops scatter. Is he a god or a demon?" The Shakya people within the city, seeing Vijayadabha's troops being killed and defeated, learned that the young man was from their city. They called him back and said, "You are still young. Why bring disgrace upon the Shakya clan? Do you not know that we follow the Buddhist precepts and practice virtuous deeds? We could defeat the enemy. We could kill many of them. But that would mean killing countless beings. The Buddha has said, anyone who kills will fall into hell after death. If you understand this, leave immediately and do not harm anyone further." Hearing this, Shama left the city and went to another country. King Vijayadabha, seeing the boy retreat into the city and not come out again, felt relieved. After some time, he ordered his troops to shout loudly, demanding that the city gates be opened without delay. The Shakya people debated whether to open the gates or not, but couldn't reach a decision. At that moment, the demon Mara Papian, knowing their predicament, transformed himself into a Shakya person and urged them, "Open the city gates. Why endure this siege any longer?" Following this advice, the Shakya people opened the city gates. King Vijayadabha then ordered, "The Shakya people are numerous. Swords and spears cannot kill them all. Bury them up to their necks in the ground, then have wild elephants trample them to death." The ministers carried out the king's orders. They commanded the soldiers to bury the Shakya people up to their necks and let wild elephants trample them. Vijayadabha also commanded, "Select 500 beautiful girls for me." The ministers obeyed, capturing 500 beautiful young women and imprisoning them for the king. Then Shakya Mahanam approached King Vijayadabha and said, "Grant me one request." King Vijayadabha asked, "What is your request?" Mahanam replied, "Let me dive to the bottom of a lake. During the time I am underwater, allow the Shakya people to escape. If I surface, then you may kill them as you wish." King Vijayadabha agreed. This is a good idea. Mahanam, who was old, dove into the water. King Vijayadabha ordered his troops to cease killing temporarily. During this time, the Shakya people tried to escape. However, those who fled from the east gate ran to the west gate. Those from the west gate ran to the east gate. Those from the south gate ran to the north gate. And those from the north gate ran to the south gate. King Vijayadabha, waiting for a long time without seeing Mahanama surface, said to his ministers, "Why hasn't my grandfather Mahanama come up yet?" The ministers sent someone to dive and search for Mahanama. After much searching, they retrieved his body. It turned out that Mahanama had tied his hair to the roots of a tree underwater and died. King Vijayadabha, regretting his actions, said, "My grandfather died because of his love for his kin. Had I known this, I would not have waged war against the Shakya." By then, King Vijayadabha had killed 9,990,000 people, 9,990,000 people, with blood flowing profusely around the city of Kapilavastu. Then King Vijayadabha went to the garden of Nikudura, where the Shakya maidens were held, and said to them, "Don't worry, ladies. I am your husband, and you will be my wives. We should treat each other well." Saying this, Vijayadabha reached out to grab one of the maidens playfully. She asked, "What does the great king wish to do?" Vijayadabha replied, "To be intimate with you." The maiden retorted, Why would you, the son of a servant, want to be intimate with me? Vidarbha, enraged, ordered, cut off her hands and feet and throw her into a deep pit. The 500 maidens, seeing this, all shouted, "Who would want to be intimate with the son of a servant?" Vidarbha, furious, ordered the hands and feet of all 500 maidens to be cut off and thrown into the deep pit. Discussion. The Shakya clan did not realize that King Vidarbha's true intention was to exact revenge and annihilate them, not merely to conquer their land and rule over it, which resulted in the name of Kapilavastu being erased because almost everyone was killed. If the Shakyas had known that after Vidarbha's victory he would kill everyone, they surely would not have opened the city gates. Instead, they would have rallied everyone to fight to the end, even if it meant killing the enemy to protect the lives of their people. If they had known Vidarbha's malicious intent, they would not have stopped the patriotic young man from fighting alone on the battlefield, nor would they have scolded and expelled him. It seems the fate of the Shakya clan's extinction, as foretold by the Buddha, had come, and thus events unfolded in such a way. It was also destined, so the celestial demon Mara intervened. Mara always appears where there is death, so he possessed a Shakya person to say what he wanted. Not knowing Vidarbha's malicious intent, the Shakyas opened the city gates and faced the disaster born from hatred and enmity. Another point to note is that Shakya Mahanamam sacrificed himself to save his people by allowing them to escape. However, instead of fleeing, they ran from one city gate to another within the city, leading to their complete massacre. Why didn't they flee? This was Mara's doing, guiding them to their deaths. This was also due to their fate, or past karma, as the Buddha called it, leading them to run in circles to their demise. How tragic and pitiful. The incident of dismembering 500 girls stems from this. The invasion was due to past insults, and the girls' taunts reignited Vidarbha's fury, making him even more vengeful. The insults were also due to witnessing the massacre of the people of Kapilavastu. The verbal abuse added to their karma, hastening the suffering they had to endure. The massacre ordered by King Vidarbha caused a significant shock in ancient India, as so many people were killed within just a few days. Rivers of blood flowed, and mountains of corpses piled up. How many times had such brutal massacres occurred in the world before, and how many times since? If everyone in this world were to learn and practice the Buddhist teachings, hatred would significantly decrease, making it possible to hope for world peace. Let's continue to follow what happens after the war in the next section of the sutra. 4. After the battle. After King Vidarbha had ravaged the entire city of Kapilavastu, he returned to the city of Savatthi. At that time, Prince Jeta was in the palace, enjoying himself with the maidens. Hearing distant music, King Vidarbha asked his attendants about the source of the music and learned that the prince was enjoying himself. The king directed his elephant towards the palace where the prince was, but the gatekeeper advised him to wait as the prince was engaged in entertainment. Angered, the king killed the gatekeeper. Hearing the commotion outside, Prince Jeta hurried out to greet his father and invited him into the palace to rest. King Vidarbha asked, "Do you know that I have been fighting against the Shakyas? Why did you continue to enjoy yourself instead of helping me?" Prince Jeta replied, "I heard about it, but I cannot bear to kill living beings, so I could not help." In a fit of rage, Vidarbha drew his sword and killed Prince Jeta. The Buddha, using his divine eye, saw that Prince Jeta had been reborn in the Triascha heaven, and he recited a verse, "Enjoying the fortune in the realm of humans and gods, Prince Jeta, doing good reaps its rewards, all due to present actions. Before suffering, there will also be suffering later. Vidarbha, worrying in both states, doing evil reaps its own harm, all due to present actions." At that time, 500 Shakyan women in the deep pit were in great pain and cried out the name of the Tathagata, saying, "The Tathagata was born here, renounced the world and became a Buddha. How can he not remember us in our suffering and pain here?" Hearing their cries with his divine hearing, the Buddha told the monks, "Let us go and see Kapilavastu and the Shakyas who have been killed." The Buddha, along with the monks, went to Kapilavastu. The Shakyan women saw the Buddha and the monks approaching from a distance and felt ashamed. At that time, King Shakra, holding a whisk, was walking to the Buddha's right, and Vaishravana, the heavenly king, was holding a jeweled umbrella on the Buddha's left. The Buddha noticed and said to King Shakra, "These women are feeling ashamed." Shakra replied, "Indeed, Blessed One." Shakra then used celestial garments to cover the bodies of the women. The Buddha then instructed Vaishravana, "These women are hungry and thirsty. You should provide them with food and drink." Vaishravana responded, "Yes, Blessed One." Vaishravana then ordered the celestial beings to bring divine food and drink to the women, ensuring they were well fed. The Buddha then preached to the 500 Shakyan women, "Everything will eventually disperse. Meeting leads to parting. Know that the 5 aggregates of human existence endure suffering and affliction. Taking a body means facing karmic retribution, resulting in both joy and suffering, sickness, aging, and death. If there were no 5 aggregates, there would be no taking of a body. Without taking a body, there would be no birth, no sickness, no aging, no death, and thus no meeting or parting, no suffering or affliction." The Buddha then explained the nature of suffering, its causes, the cessation of suffering, and the path. He taught that suffering arises from craving, greed, hatred, and ignorance, and that these should be abandoned. The women's minds were enlightened, and they became free from the impurities of worldly life, achieving inner peace. Each woman in her place passed away and was reborn in the heavens. The Buddha then recited a verse, "All formations are impermanent. What is born is subject to death. What is not born does not die. This cessation is the greatest joy." The Buddha then told the monks, "In the past, I preached in the Nikula Grove where the people flourished. Tens of thousands attained enlightenment and pure vision here. Now this place is deserted with no inhabitants. From now on, the Tathagata will not return here." After saying this, the Buddha departed, followed by the monks, to the Jetavana Anathapindata Grove. Commentary. Reading this, we see that King Pasenadi was a devout Buddhist, yet his son, King Vidadaba, lacked understanding of the Buddha's teachings. Thus, driven by anger and hatred, he committed the heinous act of mercilessly killing so many people. His grandson, Prince Jeta, however, was a devout Buddhist who understood the Dharma well. When Vidadaba reproached him, saying, "Why did you not help me?" Prince Jeta replied, "I cannot bear to kill living beings, so I could not help." Meaning, he could not bring himself to harm or kill sentient beings, and therefore he could not assist his father in killing people. This enraged Vidadaba, who then killed his own son in a fit of madness without a second thought. Furthermore, the 500 Shakyan women had their limbs cut off and were thrown into a deep pit, suffering greatly but not yet dead. It is crucial to note the extreme cruelty of Vidadaba and his soldiers, who not only severed their limbs but also stripped them naked, leaving them utterly exposed. This inhumane act reveals the savage and barbaric nature of those responsible. When these young women, now lying in agony in the pit, called out to the Buddha, he and his disciples came to comfort and assist them. Despite their terrible suffering, like flowers crushed by cruel hands in the fleeting springtime, the Buddha showed compassion. The Buddha instructed the heavenly kings to cover their bodies and care for them at the end of their lives. He preached to them, teaching that the 5 aggregates of human existence endure suffering and affliction. What are the 5 aggregates? Also known as the 5 skandhas, they consist of form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. These aggregates come together to form a person, divided as follows: body form, comprising earth solid parts like bones, nails, hair, muscles; water, liquid parts like blood, mucus, saliva, urine; wind, air like breath, burps, yawns; and fire, heat within the body; mind, mental aspects; feeling, vedana, sensations of pleasure and pain when the 6 senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, mind, contact the 6 sense objects; form, sound, smell, taste, touch, mental objects; perception, samjana, recognition or memory, the ability to conceptualize external phenomena; volition, samskara, mental activities and intentions that lead to actions driven by thoughts and desires; consciousness, vijnana, awareness and differentiation when the 6 senses contact their objects. Why do the 5 aggregates cause suffering and affliction? Because body, imbalance in the 4 elements, earth, water, wind, fire, within the body leads to illness. For example, lack of solid components can cause osteoporosis, common in the elderly. Imbalance in fire can cause fevers or chills, and lack of water, lubricants can result in joint pain, etc. Mind. All aspects of feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness bring about suffering and affliction. For instance, seeing forms with the eyes can lead to attachment or aversion. Liking something beautiful leads to desire and attachment, causing suffering, while disliking something ugly leads to criticism and rejection, also causing suffering. Hearing sounds, smelling odors, tasting flavors, feeling physical contact, and thinking about various things can all lead to suffering and affliction. Hence, the Buddha said, the 5 aggregates are subject to suffering and affliction. We now follow the final part of the story to understand the immediate retribution of karma. 5 immediate karma. When they returned to the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's park, the Buddha told the monks, King Vidadabha and his soldiers and attendants will not remain in this world much longer. Within 7 days, they will be annihilated. Hearing the Buddha's prophecy that King Vidadabha and his soldiers and attendants will die within 7 days, King Vidadabha was terrified. He told his ministers, now that the Tathagata has prophesied that we will not live long and will die within 7 days, inspect the land carefully to see if there are any threats such as enemies, fires, or floods. Why? Because the Buddha's words are never untrue. Ensure day and night vigilance and prepare for any unforeseen events. Brahmin Huko said, Great King, do not fear. There are no external enemies or natural disasters. The great king should remain at ease. Vidadabha counted the days. On the 7th day, in his joy, he took his soldiers, ministers, and maidens to the banks of the Achira River to enjoy themselves, spending the night there. At midnight, unexpected black clouds gathered, followed by heavy rain and strong winds. King Vidadabha, along with his soldiers and attendants, were swept away and annihilated by the flood. All were completely destroyed. After death, they were reborn in hell. Additionally, lightning struck and set Vidadabha's palace ablaze, burning it to ashes. Using his divine eye, the Buddha saw King Vidadabha and his entourage swept away by the storm and perishing in the floods, then being reborn in the Avicii hell. He then recited a verse, those who commit grave evil, their actions by body and speech, will endure suffering and a short lifespan. Even if they stay in the city, they will be consumed by flames. When their past lives end, they are bound for hell. At that time, the monks asked the Buddha, now that King Vidadabha is dead, where is he reborn? The Buddha replied, King Vidadabha has been reborn in the Avicii hell. A monk inquired further, what deeds did the Shakyan people do in the past to be so gravely harmed by King Vidadabha now? The Buddha recounted, long ago in the city of Rajagaha, there was a large village of fishermen. Life was extremely difficult there. People had to eat tree roots. In that village was a large pond teeming with fish. The villagers would catch and eat the fish. There were 2 types of fish, one called kautaka and another called dual tongue. The 2 leaders of these fish species conversed. We have done no harm to these villagers, yet they catch and eat our kin. If we have any merit, we will use it to seek vengeance in the future. Not long after, the 2 fish leaders were also caught. At that time, an 8-year-old boy who neither harmed nor caught fish saw the capture of the 2 fish leaders and rejoiced. You should know, monks, that the villagers of Rajagaha are now the Shakyan people. The Kautaka fish leader is now King Vidadabha, and the dual-tongued fish leader is now Brahmin Huko. The boy who rejoiced at the capture of the 2 large fish is now me. The villagers who ate the fish are now suffering retribution, and I, who rejoiced, suffer from headaches. Because the Tathagata no longer takes physical form, I transcend all dangers. You should be mindful of your actions in body, speech, and mind. You should learn this well. Discussion. The events that transpired with King Vidadabha were indeed extraordinary and beyond everyone's expectations. When King Vidadabha first heard the Buddha's prophecy, he was fearful. However, the minister Huko reassured him that there was no need to worry about enemies, fires, or floods, as they had been well prepared. Moreover, by the 7th day, everything seemed calm, and King Vidadabha believed he was safe, so much so that he ordered a celebration by the river. Little did he know that this would be the final feast of farewell for the most arrogant and malevolent individual in the world. In just a few hours, a thunderstorm with torrential rain and lightning swept away the pride and arrogance of a man who had slaughtered nearly 10 million lives. The storm's waters washed away the blood and buried the bodies of the people of Kapilavastu, who had been massacred just 10 days earlier. This tragic event, driven by hatred and cruelty, marked a catastrophic moment in human history. Over 2,550 years have passed since then, yet history shows that humanity continues to harbor hatred and cruelty, resulting in countless massacres worldwide. In the final part of the sutra, the Buddha recounts past karma and the previous deeds that led to these consequences. We see that karma is a natural law. Where there is cause, there is effect. The effect follows the cause as a shadow follows the body, inescapable. Only through practicing the Dharma can one partially transform karma, and by attaining enlightenment and liberation from the cycle of birth and death, one can ultimately escape suffering and the effects of karma. 6. Why did the Buddha not save his family from being massacred? The law of cause and effect is strict and spares no one. The Buddha, Shakyamuni, understood this when he witnessed the massacre of his entire clan. The story goes that when Shakyamuni Buddha was still in the world, his homeland was besieged. One of his 10 great disciples, Maudgalianar, was eager to use his supernatural powers to save them. However, no matter how great these powers were, they could not overcome karmic force. In the past, during the Buddha's time, King Vidudaba of the kingdom of Kosala led a great army to attack Kapilavastu, the land ruled by the Buddha's father. The Buddha personally went to meet King Vidudaba to request a peaceful resolution, but it was in vain. There was a time when King Vidudaba besieged the city of Kapilavastu. Initially, Shakyamuni Buddha wanted to help, so he sat on the path to block King Vidudaba 3 times. Although King Vidudaba ordered his troops to retreat, his hatred did not diminish. Sometime later, King Vidudaba again besieged the city of Kapilavastu. Shakyamuni Buddha had a disciple named Maudgalianar, who was the most supernaturally powerful among the Buddha's disciples. At that time, no one could compare to Maudgalianar, and he firmly believed that with his supernatural powers, there was nothing in the world that could not be resolved. Upon learning of the siege, Maudgalianar was agitated and said to Shakyamuni Buddha, "World-honored one, the city of Kapilavastu is being invaded by King Vidudaba. We must think of a way to save the people." Shakyamuni Buddha looked at Maudgalianar for a moment and then compassionately said, "Maudgalianar, this is the karmic retribution of our people for the deeds they committed in the past. You cannot help them. They did not repent, but instead remained arrogant and corrupt, so they must face this downfall." Maudgalianar, unwilling to accept this, decided to use his supernatural powers to save the land of Kapilavastu. At that time, King Vidudaba's army, numbering 100,000, surrounded the 4 sides of Kapilavastu so tightly that not even an ant could escape. Maudgalianar used his supernatural powers to fly into the city and selected 500 elite individuals, placing them in a bowl, then flew up into the sky to rescue them from the city. After reaching a safe place, Maudgalianar opened the bowl to release the 500 people, but to his shock, he found the bowl filled with blood. Maudgalianar asked the Buddha the reason for this. The Buddha recounted that in a distant past life, there was a village with a large fish pond. During a festival, the villagers caught and ate the fish, including a large one. At that time, a young boy who was vegetarian, out of mischief, hit the large fish on the head 3 times with a stick. The large fish from the past life was now King Vidudaba. The smaller fish were his current army, the villagers were the Shakya clan being killed, and the young boy who hit the fish was the Buddha himself. The Shakya clan faced near extermination, but the Buddha did not use supernatural powers to defeat the enemy and save his clan. This was all due to karmic retribution, the law of cause and effect. In past lives, the people of the Shakya clan had committed acts of killing, and in this life, they had to bear the consequences. Supernatural powers could not save them. The Buddha said, "Fixed karma is hard to change." Because fixed karma is unavoidable, even though Maudgalianar saved 500 people from the Shakya clan, they could not escape death. Maudgalianar then understood the Buddha's words, realizing that the law of cause and effect cannot be altered. Whoever commits bad deeds must repay them. Maudgalianar was proficient in supernatural powers, but even these powers could not overcome karmic force. Eventually, King Vidudaba was also condemned to hell. Because humans suffer due to karmic retribution, they endure suffering in the cycle of reincarnation to repay their karmic debts. It's like an endless serial where everyone plays a role. The karma sown in past lives results in the consequences faced in this life. Debts must be repaid. This is an unchangeable law of the universe. Even the Buddha, upon witnessing the massacre of his clan, could do nothing because the universe operates under immutable laws, which no one, not even the Buddha, can change. The only way to resolve all grievances and karmic debts is through cultivation, improving oneself to align with the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. The Shakya clan nearly faced extinction, but the Buddha did not use his supernatural powers to defeat the enemy and save his clan. This was all due to karmic retribution, the law of cause and effect. In past lives, the people of the Shakya clan had committed acts of killing, and in this life they had to bear the consequences. Supernatural powers could not save them.